Hello, and welcome to Let's Play The Legend of Zelda, the Third Quest, with me, Dr. J. Now, I think by this point most people know what this is, but just in case you're not familiar, the backstory to this game is that in Japan there was an add-on for the Super Nintendo, or Super Famicom as it was known in Japan, which we never got in the West. I think it was called the Satellaview. And basically, it was a strange concept. It broadcast games over a satellite connection, and you were only able to play games at the time when it was broadcasting. It's a weird idea, and sounds to me like a pretty inconvenient way to play video games, but there were some pretty awesome gems that were broadcast on this service, including what is essentially a Super Nintendo remake of the original Legend of Zelda, upgraded to use 16-bit graphics with a completely remixed overworld map and all new dungeon maps. And the code was recovered, and ROM hackers have hacked the game so that instead of being time limited like it was in the original broadcast, you can now play it at your leisure like you could play the original Legend of Zelda game on the Nintendo. And I don't know about you, but to me that is just an amazing thing, because now this is essentially a Super Nintendo remake/remix of Legend of Zelda with new maps, new content, and I love the original Legend of Zelda, so I think that is just awesome. And I'm really thankful to the ROM hackers who made this available for us to play. Now, there is, I guess, less content in this version of the game than in the original. For one thing, the overworld is half the size. So instead of being 16 by 8 screens, it's 8 by 8. For a total of 64 screens instead of 128. Now that doesn't bother me, because I feel like the original game's overworld was larger than necessary anyway, and that the remixed, more compact overworld actually feels better. And the other thing is, this version of the game has 8 dungeons instead of 9. Again, to me, that's not a big deal. I don't really care about going down from 9 dungeons to 8 dungeons. That's still plenty of Zelda dungeoning goodness. I guess the last thing I'll say is I absolutely love this opening theme. It is just so evocative and full of adventure. I'm going to let it just play through once without saying anything, just so we can all enjoy one iteration of it before I stop rambling on and start just playing the game proper. Oh man, that is so good. That melody is just amazing. Alright, but that's enough preamble. Let's go ahead and start the game. Okay, here is the character select screen. I do have a existing save because I did do a practice run through this game. Now this is my third take just trying to create my character, because this interface is god-awful. I want to keep my streams very clean, so I don't want to curse, but it is tempting to curse at how unbelievably god-awful the character registration interface is. It's very true to the original. I think it's an exact duplicate of the original, so I don't really blame the ROM hackers for that. So, in the original version of this game for the Satellaview, obviously I only know all this from having researched it on the internet. But I guess in the original, you didn't play as Link. You played as your avatar. That I guess you had an avatar for the Satellaview service, And your avatar could be either male or female. And so the ROM hackers made it so that you can play as either Link or Zelda. Now, personally, I find the idea of hacking and slashing my way through Ganon's minions in full princess regalia with a dress and a crown to be a little silly, so I'm just going to be traditional and run as Link. And again, I'm going to be boring and just enter my name as Link. And the letters, of course, are on the opposite side each time. Okay, and then I think I just hit start. Excellent. Okay, we have registered our character. Now we can select our character from the start screen, and let's go and embark on a new adventure. Now this original part is actually not controlled by me, it's automated. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this. Oh, the classic nostalgia factor. We all recognize this, don't we? At least those of us who are old enough to have played the original Legend of Zelda when it first came out. That's right, folks, I'm old. I don't actually think I'm old. That's just me being facetious. But some people would say I am. Youngins. Alright, so we'll see how well I remember how to get at everything, because as I said, the overworld is remixed. It's kind of a compressed version of the original. And it's not like I have the original memorized or anything. I don't. So I don't necessarily know by heart how to get to everything. And as any LPer will tell you, playing and commentating at the same time is harder than it looks, so I'm sure my gameplay is going to be embarrassing. That's fine. I'm not trying to do a speed run or a perfect playthrough or anything. As long as I can just get through the game with a reasonable level of competence, I'm happy. So I really, really like the redone 16-bit graphics. I think that they're done really well. They still capture the full feel of the original, but they just look completely better. Instead of each tile or character being like 2 or 3 colors, we actually have a reasonable palette with a good range of colors, and I just think everything looks really good and well done. I would have sworn that there it is, it was a little further to the right. Hidden Roopy Cave. We're going to want to go out of our way to get as many rupees as we can, because it gets expensive buying all the stuff that you need in this game. By the way, this is a good opportunity for me to voice my one complaint about the original Legend of Zelda, is it relied very heavily on just hiding things in places where there is no way to figure out where they are except by randomly bombing walls all over the place or just burning every bush in sight, which that doesn't count as a puzzle. That's just tedious. That's just a way of padding out the gameplay and making it take longer to finish, unless you're referencing a guide or whatever. I'm not a fan of that. That is the one area of the original Legend of Zelda that I don't like. But I do really like the open world aspect of it and all the freedom of exploration. Even though I love a lot of games in the Zelda series, I do think that it's a valid complaint some people have that as the games became more linear, which started happening immediately, even the direct sequel to this, Adventure of Link, was very linear by comparison, kind of guiding you from place to place. Something was lost with losing the overworld, or I mean the open world free exploration aspect. I have seen that complaint made, and I think it's valid. Obviously, Breath of the Wild tried to get back to that open world exploration aspect and did a good job. I do think Breath of the Wild is a very good game, although I actually have a lot of complaints about it too, and don't think it's anywhere near the best Zelda game ever. But this is not an LP about Breath of the Wild, so I will save my comments about that game for another time. But yeah, I really like the Zelda series. One of my favorite game series of all time, unquestionably. Ocarina of Time is probably my favorite, that and Twilight Princess. Definitely some of my all-time favorite games ever. Link to the Past likewise. And actually, I would rate this remake of the original Legend of Zelda very, very highly as well. Just lots of really good Zelda games. I've never played Spirit Tracks or Phantom Hourglass. I don't like the cartoony Link or Cat Eye Link versions as much. That's just my personal opinion. I don't care for that style. For example, that was also the style in Wind Waker, very cartoony Link. The gameplay in Wind Waker was great, but I didn't care for the visual style as much. By contrast, I really like the visual style in Twilight Princess. A little more realistic, a little grittier, a little darker. Big fan of that. Not such a fan of when enemies just charge you as soon as you come in the door and get a cheap shot off on you. That's a little on the lame side. Anybody who hasn't seen this game before but does remember the original Legend of Zelda will have already noticed that the dungeon layout is completely different. The dungeons are all entirely remade, redone from the original, and it very obviously spells out the letter S. Most of the dungeons are going to spell letters. It was a trope in the original Legend of Zelda that the dungeons either looked like an image, you know, like a monster head, or they looked like letters. In the second quest, in the original, they looked like letters. Just making sure I haven't missed any rooms. One thing that you need to watch out for is it is entirely possible to complete dungeons, as in you kill the dungeon boss and you get the Triforce Piece, and yet to miss a critical item for advancing the game in the dungeon. That is absolutely a thing that can happen. Or to miss really useful upgrades, like bomb capacity upgrades. So you want to be careful that you don't finish a dungeon but fail to find important things. And I'm backtracking here because I realized, just talking about not missing things, I didn't go to the west here. Oh, that was brilliant. Walked right into the trap. Oh, and it did a full heart of damage, I think. So let's try not to do that again. Like, right there, I could have easily missed this bow. So you want to be very thorough about exploring dungeons. Check your map to make sure you didn't miss anything. I'm glad that the monsters freeze during the pickup animation, because it would be extremely cheap if they could fly over you and hit you while you're stuck in that animation. Or rather, lack of animation. Now, the way the bow works in the original Legend of Zelda is you just lose a rupee every time you shoot it, which I guess represents the cost of buying arrows without the inconvenience of having to buy the arrows ahead of time. Which is a mechanic I really like, actually. I think it's it's not realistic, obviously, but it's an elegant way to represent that the player does have to purchase his arrows without the inconvenience of having to buy them and possibly running out. The original Legend of Zelda didn't have much in the way of puzzles. Pushing a block to open a door pretty much counts as a puzzle in the original. It's more about exploration and lots of combat. And there's occasional kind of sort of puzzles, but nothing like in later games. Really hoping I get a heart to recover from walking into that trap like an idiot. Always nice when you pick up this timer. Stops all the enemies cold, so you can then kill them at your leisure. Still not any heart drops. I do really like the water animation as well. I think it looks quite nice. The environments for the dungeon just look great. Like, if you can remember how the original Legend of Zelda looked, the walls were just perfectly smooth. and like flat single color. It almost looked more technological than anything, which I guess had its own interesting mystery to it. But this, like, you've got the moss growing on the walls, the weird statue faces. It's a lot more detailed, and it looks a lot more like a dank, creepy dungeon labyrinth. I really, really like what they did with the graphics in this remake. I'm probably going to be splurging about how much I like the graphics a lot. Pretty embarrassing to take a hit from these things. But their random movement can be annoying to deal with when you don't have a ranged weapon. Which I don't, because I'm not at full health, so I don't have my sword beam. Okay, I'm in danger of dying now. If I die in the first dungeon, that's going to be humiliating. Something, please drop a heart. I can't believe how many enemies I've killed with 0 heart drops. So partly I'm playing poorly, but partly I'm getting very unlucky as well. Oh man, we're gonna have to put up with that annoying low on health beep sound. Come on, Wallmaster, let me kill you, and please drop a heart. Thank you. That was cooperative of you. I appreciate that. Oh, there's the classic boss monster is in the next room creepy breathing sound. Okay, they dropped 1 heart, so at least I'm not on death's door. Should be enough to beat our friend Aquamentus. I'm going to be a real wimp about this. Okay, and take a hit like a complete idiot. I cannot believe that. Just after I was joking about how I'm going to be so careful, I then walk right into one of his hits. You gonna breathe at me? No? Okay. Alright. Cheap shot. Literally in the middle of his death animation, he gets a shot off right in my face. Okay, so almost died in level 1. That would have truly been an embarrassment, but it's okay, we didn't, and now we get our first Triforce Piece. I also like the creepy looking statues, what they did with the 16-bit upgrade with those. And we have acquired a Triforce Piece! Collecting 8 pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom is of course the plot to the original Legend of Zelda. The Triforce of Courage wasn't even a thing yet. Zelda had the Triforce of Wisdom and split it up into 8 pieces, and Ganon has the Triforce of Power. Triforce of Courage didn't come into it until the sequel, Adventure of Link. Alright, I'm gonna see if I can afford anything at the shop, if I can remember how to reach the shop. Ah, cheap shot. Thank you. Okay. Was it a bombable wall here? Trying to remember. Oh, it wasn't even a bombable wall. It's just right out there in the open. I just wasted a bunch of bombs for no reason. Okay, so arrows, the magic shield, which can repel more things than a normal shield. You do need to buy the arrows once. Let me slightly amend my earlier statement about the bow. You need to buy the arrows once. Then it just deducts a rupee every time you shoot it. Right now I can't use the bow at all, but if I purchase these arrows, now I can. And it will deduct a rupee every time I fire. Obviously we can't afford the shield right now, and I'm not going to grind for it at the moment. We can get that shield cheaper later anyways. It is going to be nice when we have it though, because we'll be able to block the fireball breath from the Zoras. And I will be going out of my way to collect rupees, because as I said, you really want as many rupees as you can get in this game. There's the fairy. There have been a lot of different styles of fairies in the Zelda series. From the early game, just very low resolution, very sort of cartoony fairies, to the basically glowing balls of light with wings of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and the infamously annoying Navi. Hey, listen! And oh my gosh, the great fairies in Ocarina of Time were pure nightmare fuel. Man, those things are terrifying. That horrid cackling laugh they do, the caked on mascara, it's just all so awful. And that's, again, the reliance on hiding things. And not even, like, I wouldn't mind if there was a crack on the side of this rock to sort of hint that you need to bomb it. That would be fine. Like in, you know, A Link to the Past, that cracked walls indicate areas that you bomb. But there's just no indication at all. It's just trial and error where you have to bomb and burn to find secrets. And this is the last time I'll mention that because I don't want to harp on about it over and over, but it's just a way to pad out the gameplay time, and it's pure tedium. Like, there's no benefit to doing it that way. I don't mind if cool secrets are hidden like that. That's fine, but when mandatory areas of progression, like a dungeon level, are hidden that way, that's bad form. Okay, so we just got the Boomerang. Very useful item, because it's basically a ranged weapon with unlimited ammo. However, it can't kill all enemies. It can kill these bats because they're so weak, but tougher enemies will either only stun them or do nothing to them at all. More of that cool looking animated water. I think I'm probably going to do 2 dungeons per video. That might break down for some of the later dungeons, because the farther you get into the game, the longer the dungeons become. But at least early on, I think 2 dungeons per video will be good, otherwise the videos will be very short. But I think 2 dungeons per will make for a good length. But yeah, I was talking about the many varied styles of fairies in Zelda games. Ranging from the cartoony, to the pretty and elegant, to the horrible nightmare fuel. My favorite is definitely the Great Fairy from Twilight Princess, for completely non-shallow reasons, I promise. Has absolutely nothing to do with her toplessness whatsoever. Alright. Okay, so here we see that the first dungeon was an S. This one is a T and a period, which of course forms the abbreviation for the word saint. So we know that the dungeons are going to form the name Saint something or somebody. And we can see that we're going to have to bomb somewhere, because checking our map, there is no door allowing us to proceed, but we can see that there's rooms to the north of us. So one of those is going to be a bombable wall. And it's this one. That classic secret found noise. Get wrecked, Gorias. Oh, and of course it might be useful to... Well, no, we're maxed out on bombs, so let's leave that there for now. We could use the Boomerang to pick it up, but since we're maxed out anyway, let's not waste it in case we have reason to come back for it. Yep, it was pretty obvious this would be a Wall Master room. The Boomerang does stun Wall Masters, which is very useful. In later games, Wall Masters are joined by another enemy called Floor Masters, which doesn't sound like a monster so much as a crappy piece of home exercise equipment. I did not make that joke up, sadly. That is from the official Perfect Guide to Ocarina of Time. I like reading strategy guides not so much because I want the help playing video games, but because it's just kind of fun. It's almost like reading a story in a weird kind of way, reading a guide about a game you really like. So I do have strategy guides for some of my favorite games just for that reason. Oh, that was Dodongo. We fed him bombs and he died. He was the boss. We win. Not much of a boss, old Dodongo. He dislikes smoke. Speaking of which, we did miss a room. And as I was just saying, we never ever want to miss rooms. Now, I'm pretty sure this one is just going to be the old man who gives the hint about Dodongo disliking smoke. So I don't think we really missed anything important, but for the sake of completionism, let's go check it out. Wall masters are staying dead, which is good. Boom. And as I thought, Dodongo dislikes smoke. Thanks, old man. I like the weirdly almost post-apocalyptic feel of the original Legend of Zelda, where it seems like civilization has devolved into people hiding in caves. No real civilization to be found at all. Of course, the game's story kind of alludes to somewhere there's civilization, because Impa fled from Hyrule Castle, Princess Zelda, presumably had a kingdom, came from the castle, etc., etc. But we never see that in the game. Of course, Adventure of Link expands on the world and shows us that there's actually towns all over the place. But that's a story for another time. Now that we have completed 2 dungeons and collected 2 pieces of the Triforce, we're going to call it a video, and we're going to pick up with the next 2 dungeons and probably quite a bit of overworld exploration in the next video. So hopefully you'll join me for that, and I'll see you then. Bye!